You wake up in complete darkness. Your head is pounding. The air is thick, wrong. You try to breathe deeply, but your lungs burn. Something's in the air, something sweet, chemical. You reach out in the darkness, and your hand hits a wall. You stand up, stumble, find another wall, another. You're in a small room, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, no windows, and you realize with growing panic that you can't find the door. You pound on the walls, scream for help, but the sound is wrong. Muffled, like the walls are swallowing your voice, like no one can hear you, and you're getting dizzy now, lightheaded. Your legs are weak, you're sinking to the floor, your vision is going dark, and in your last conscious moment, you see it, a tiny hole in the wall at floor level, and gas is pouring through it, filling the room, filling your lungs, and you understand. This isn't an accident. This isn't a mistake. Someone is doing this to you. Someone is watching. Someone is killing you, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. This happened, not in a horror movie, not in a nightmare, but in Chicago, 1893, in a building disguised as a hotel, where the charming owner built gas chambers into the walls, where over 200 people checked in and never checked out, where the screaming was designed to go unheard, and where the killer kept meticulous notes on how long it took each victim to die. But before we watch you die in that room, before we explore every horrifying feature of this building, before we count the bodies and learn the names and understand the full scope of the nightmare, you need to know how this started, how a hotel became a slaughterhouse, how a con artist became America's first documented serial killer, how Herman Webster Mudgett became H. Holmes, and how he built a castle specifically designed to murder you. Because that room you just woke up in, that sealed chamber filling with gas, that's just one room, one method, one small piece of a building that had 60 rooms and dozens of ways to kill. Trapdoors, secret passages, soundproof torture chambers, a crematorium in the basement, an acid vat, a stretching rack, and a man who watched through peepholes as you died, who timed your final moments, who studied your terror, who treated your death as an experiment. Welcome to Mind Vale. This is the Murder Castle, and I promise you by the end of this, you'll understand why some buildings should be burned to the ground. Chicago, Illinois, 1893. The world's Columbian Exposition, the Chicago World's Fair. 27 million visitors pour into the city over 6 months. Families, tourists, young women seeking jobs, adventure, opportunity. The fair is magnificent. Electric lights, the Ferris wheel, exhibits from around the world. But 3 miles away, on the corner of 63rd and Wallace, there's another attraction, one that nobody knows about, one that nobody survives. It looks like a hotel. 3 stories, elegant, well-maintained, a sign out front, World's Fair Hotel. Perfect for tourists, affordable rooms, convenient location. The owner is charming, handsome, well-dressed. A doctor, he says, Dr. H. Holmes. And if you're a young woman traveling alone, if you need a job, if you're far from home with no family to miss you, Dr. Holmes has a room for you, a job for you, an opportunity for you, and you'll never leave. Because this isn't a hotel, it's a murder castle, built specifically to kill, with gas pipes in the walls controlled from Holmes's office, soundproof rooms where screaming does nothing, trapdoors that drop you into the basement, secret passages so Holmes can move unseen, a crematorium, an acid vat, a stretching rack, and Dr. Holmes? His real name is Herman Webster Mudgett, and he's America's first documented serial killer. And by the time anyone realizes what he's built, what he's done, over 200 people are dead. This is the true story of H. Holmes, the man who built a castle to kill, the con artist who became a monster, the murderer who confessed to 27 deaths but probably killed far, far more, and the hotel that still stands today on that same corner, 63rd and Wallace, a post office now. But the bones are still there, the basement still sealed, the spaces between the walls, the rooms where people died screaming and nobody heard them. And we're going back to that gas chamber. We're going to finish that scene. We're going to tell you who died there, how long it took, what Holmes wrote in his notes about your final moments. But first, you need to understand the man, because H. Holmes didn't start as a killer. He started as something else, something that in some ways is even more disturbing. Let's start with the man, because H. Holmes didn't start as a killer. He started as a liar, a con artist, a man who discovered early that charm could get you anything: money, trust, access to victims. Herman Webster Mudgett, born May 16, 1861. Gilmanton, New Hampshire, middle-class family. Father was a postmaster, alcoholic, violent. Young Herman was smart, very smart, excelled in school. But there was something wrong, something off, something that his childhood classmates noticed and remembered decades later. He was cruel to animals, caught torturing a dog, setting cats on fire, dissecting living creatures to see how they worked, to watch them die. His classmates were terrified of him, but adults saw a bright, polite boy, a future doctor, a success story. Herman went to medical school, University of Vermont, then transferred to University of Michigan, and here's where he discovered something useful. Medical schools needed cadavers, bodies for dissection, for study. And Herman had access to the morgue, the unclaimed bodies, the corpses nobody would miss. And he found a way to make money. He'd steal bodies, disfigure them, make them unrecognizable, then take out life insurance policies on fake identities. Discover the bodies, claim the insurance money. It was fraud, but it was profitable, and it taught him something important. Dead bodies are valuable, and if nobody's looking for them, nobody knows they're dead. He graduated in 1884, got married to a woman named Clara Lovering, had a son, seemed normal, a doctor, a family man. But Herman was already living a double life. He abandoned his family in 1885, changed his name to H. Holmes, moved to Chicago, and started fresh. New identity, new city, new opportunities. Chicago in 1885 was perfect for a man like Holmes. Huge, crowded, growing fast. People coming and going constantly. No central records, no way to track someone who wanted to disappear. If you claimed to be a doctor, you were a doctor. If you said you were wealthy, people believed you. It was a con artist's paradise. Holmes got a job at a pharmacy owned by a Dr. Holton. The pharmacy was successful. Good location in Englewood, a neighborhood on the south side. And Dr. Holton's wife was dying of cancer. The business was too much to manage. Holmes saw an opportunity. He was charming, helpful, gained Holton's trust. And when Mrs. Holton died, Holmes offered to buy the pharmacy. Holton agreed, desperate to retire, to escape the grief. Holmes made payments for a few months, then stopped. And when Dr. Holton came asking for his money, Holmes said he'd left town, moved away. But neighbors reported something different. They'd seen Holton come to the pharmacy, seen him go inside, and never seen him leave. Holmes said he didn't know what happened to him. said Holton must have gone somewhere else. But Holton was never seen again, never heard from, never found. This was Holmes's first suspected murder. Dr. Holton, the man who trusted him, who gave him an opportunity, who probably died in that pharmacy, body disposed of, gone. And Holmes now owned a successful business. No more payments, no more questions, just a pharmacy and an empty lot across the street. 1887. Holmes buys the empty lot, tells people he's going to build a hotel. Perfect timing. The World's Fair is coming in 1893. Chicago will be flooded with tourists. A hotel is a smart investment, and Holmes has plans. Big plans. Strange plans. Plans that will make absolutely no sense unless you understand what he's really building. Holmes hires construction crews. But here's the key detail. He never uses the same crew twice. He fires them constantly, hires new workers, tells them different things, shows them different blueprints. No single crew sees the full picture. No one understands what's being built. They just follow orders. Build a doorway that leads nowhere. Install a gas pipe in a bedroom wall. Create a soundproof room, and then they're fired. And new workers come in, building something else. The building takes 3 years, 1887 to 1890, 3 stories, retail space on the ground floor, apartments and hotel rooms on the upper floors. Looks normal from the outside, elegant, well designed. But inside is a nightmare. Second and third floors are a maze, over 60 rooms, hallways that don't make sense, doors that open to brick walls, staircases that lead nowhere, rooms with no windows, no ventilation, doors that only lock from the outside, and throughout the building, hidden features. Gas pipes venting into sealed rooms, trapdoors in floors, chutes leading to the basement, secret passages between walls, peepholes so Holmes can watch the rooms, watch his guests, watch them live, watch them die. The basement is worse, much worse, a crematorium, large enough to burn a human body, an acid vat for dissolving flesh, a stretching rack, medieval torture device, a dissection table, surgical tools, and a maze of corridors, storage rooms, spaces where you could hide bodies, where you could work without being seen, where screams wouldn't reach the street. By 1890, the building is complete. Holmes moves in, opens the pharmacy on the ground floor, rents out some of the second floor space as offices and shops. And the third floor? The third floor is the hotel, World's Fair Hotel, opening just in time for the 1893 exposition, ready for tourists, ready for victims. But Holmes doesn't wait for the fair. He starts immediately, hiring women to work in the building, secretaries, pharmacy assistants, shop workers, young women, new to Chicago, far from family, nobody to notice if they disappear. And Holmes is charming, attractive, a doctor, successful. Women trust him, accept his job offers, move into his building, and vanish. Emmeline Cigrande, 1892, beautiful, engaged to be married. Holmes hires her as a stenographer. She moves into the building, works in the pharmacy, and writes to her fiancé regularly, until one day the letters stop. Her fiancé comes to Chicago, looking for her. Holmes says she left, ran away, broke off the engagement, but her belongings are still in her room. Her clothes, her jewelry, everything. She wouldn't leave without them. The fiancé searches, goes to the police, but there's no evidence of foul play, no body, no proof. Emmeline is just gone. Julia Smythe, Holmes's mistress, married to one of the building's tenants. Holmes seduces her, convinces her to leave her husband, promises to marry her. She moves into the building with her daughter Pearl, and for a while they're happy. Julia works in the pharmacy. Pearl plays in the building. Holmes treats them well, until Julia gets pregnant, wants Holmes to divorce his wife and marry her, wants legitimacy, a real relationship. Holmes takes Julia to the basement, says he'll perform an abortion. She trusts him, goes willingly, and never comes back. Her daughter Pearl? Pearl disappears the same day, 8 years old. Trusting. Probably told her mother was sick. Probably led down to the basement. Probably didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Julia's husband searches, demands answers. Holmes says Julia ran away, took Pearl, and left. But Julia's things are still there. Pearl's toys, their clothes, everything. They wouldn't leave it all behind. The husband doesn't believe Holmes, goes to the police. But again, no evidence, no bodies, no proof. Just 2 more people who walked into Holmes's building and vanished. And here's what makes it impossible to count Holmes's victims. Most of them were never reported missing. Young women traveling alone, immigrants, people estranged from their families, sex workers, people nobody was looking for. They'd check into the hotel, take a job in the building, and disappear. And nobody knew, nobody cared, nobody investigated, because in 1890s Chicago, people vanished all the time. The World's Fair opens in May 1893, and for 6 months, Chicago is flooded with tourists. 27 million visitors, hotels are packed, accommodations are scarce, and Holmes's World's Fair Hotel has rooms available, affordable, convenient, perfect for young women traveling alone, or couples looking for privacy, or families trying to save money. And Holmes is selective. He doesn't kill everyone. That would draw attention. He chooses carefully. Women traveling alone, no family in Chicago, no friends expecting them, no one who will report them missing. He charms them, offers them jobs, discounts on rooms, opportunities too good to refuse. And once they're inside, once they're isolated, once they trust him, they're trapped. The rooms on the 3rd floor have a system, gas pipes venting into the rooms, controlled by valves in Holmes's private office. He can turn them on remotely, fill a room with gas while the occupant sleeps, watch through the peephole as they suffocate, as they panic, as they die. And the rooms are soundproof. Screaming does nothing. Pounding on the door does nothing. There's no escape. Some rooms have trapdoors, hidden in the floor, covered by rugs. Step on them and you fall down a chute into the basement, into the dark. Broken bones, disoriented, and Holmes is waiting. With his surgical tools, his acid vat, his crematorium. Other rooms have doors that only lock from the outside. You can't leave. You're sealed in. No windows, no ventilation. You suffocate slowly or starve, or die of dehydration, while Holmes goes about his business, greeting new guests, charming new victims, building his body count. The basement is where the real horror happens. After the gas, after the fall, after the slow death in the sealed room. Bodies are brought down, through the chutes, through the secret passages, and Holmes goes to work. He dissects some, practices his surgical skills, removes organs, studies anatomy, keeps detailed notes, photographs, sketches, like a medical researcher, except his subjects didn't consent, didn't volunteer, were murdered specifically for his education. He burned some, in the crematorium, reduces them to ash, disposing of evidence, making people disappear completely. No body, no crime, no investigation, just ash swept into the Chicago River, or buried in the yard, or scattered in the alley, gone forever. He dissolves some in acid, strips the flesh from the bones, leaves nothing but a skeleton. And here's where it gets worse. Holmes sells the skeletons to medical schools, research facilities, private collectors. Articulated skeletons were valuable, useful for teaching, for study, and Holmes had a supply. Fresh skeletons, well preserved. He'd strip the flesh, articulate the bones, wire them together, and sell them for $25 to $50 each, profiting from murder, turning victims into commodities. And some bodies he keeps, experiments with, stretches on the rack, trying to see how far the human body can be elongated before it breaks. It's medieval, it's sadistic, it's pure torture. And Holmes is doing it in 1893 in Chicago, in a building full of people who have no idea what's happening in the basement. During the World's Fair, Holmes is at his peak, money flowing in, victims plentiful, nobody investigating, nobody suspicious. He's living a double life. Upstairs, he's Dr. Holmes, charming, successful, the friendly hotel owner, the helpful pharmacist. Downstairs, he's a monster, killing, dissecting, experimenting, and nobody knows. But like all serial killers, Holmes gets greedy, gets careless, and that's when everything falls apart. Benjamin Petezel, 1894, con artist. Holmes' partner in various insurance frauds. They'd worked together for years, stealing, scheming, making money through lies and theft. And Holmes has a new plan, a big insurance payout. Petezel will fake his death. They'll collect the insurance, split the money, easy. Except Holmes doesn't fake Petezel's death. He actually kills him, bludgeons him, stages it to look like an accident, collects the insurance money, and keeps it all. But Petezel has a family, a wife, 5 children, and they're asking questions. Where's Benjamin? Where's the money? What happened? Holmes tells Mrs. Petezel that Benjamin is in hiding, that the fraud worked, that he's waiting for things to cool down, and he offers to take care of the children, to bring them to their father, to reunite the family. Mrs. Petezel, desperate and trusting, agrees, hands over 3 of her children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard, ages 15, 11, and 8. Holmes takes the children, travels with them across the country, Indianapolis, Detroit, Toronto, and one by one, they disappear. Howard first, 8 years old, trusting, probably told he was going to see his father, probably didn't understand until it was too late. Holmes later confesses to strangling him, burning his body in a stove, an 8-year-old child, murdered because his father was Holmes's partner, because he was a loose end. Then Alice and Nellie, locked in a trunk, gassed, asphyxiated slowly, terrified, crying for their mother, for their father, for help that never came. Their bodies are later found in a basement in Toronto, buried in a shallow grave. 2 children, murdered for insurance money, murdered to cover up another murder, murdered because they existed. Mrs. Petezel never sees her husband or children again, doesn't know they're dead. Holmes keeps lying, keeps stalling, until the police finally arrest him, not for murder, for insurance fraud. The Petezel claim was suspicious. Investigators were looking into it, and they found Holmes. And when they started digging into his past, when they started connecting the dots, they realized they'd caught something much worse than a con artist. Police searched the murder castle, November 1894, and what they find is beyond comprehension. The gas pipes, the soundproof rooms, the trapdoors, the chutes to the basement, the crematorium still containing bone fragments, the acid vat with traces of dissolved tissue, the surgical tools, the blood stains, the stretching rack, and in the walls, in the spaces between rooms, in the crawl spaces nobody was supposed to find, they find bones, human bones, fragments of skulls, pieces of corpses that couldn't be fully destroyed, evidence of dozens of murders. Holmes is arrested, charged initially with the murders of Benjamin Pitezel and his 3 children. But the investigation expands. Police identify more victims, women who stayed at the hotel and vanished, employees who were never seen again, neighbors who went into the building and didn't come out. The newspapers go crazy. America's first serial killer, the murder castle, the torture doctor. Headlines scream the details. The country is horrified, fascinated, terrified. This is 1895. Serial killers aren't supposed to exist yet. Jack the Ripper was barely 7 years earlier. This is something new, something American, something that proves monsters don't just exist in London. They're here, in Chicago, building hotels to kill tourists. Holmes confesses to 27 murders, but he's lying. Even in confession, he's playing games. Some of the people he confesses to killing are proven to be alive. Others he claims he killed are people who died naturally. He's trying to inflate his numbers, to become more famous, more notorious, to control his own legend, but investigators believe the real number is much higher, over 100, possibly over 200, because the building operated for years, because so many people disappeared, because the bone fragments in the walls don't match the identified victims, because there are too many unaccounted deaths, too many missing people, too many loose ends that all point back to Holmes and his building. Holmes goes to trial. April 1895, only charged with the murder of Benjamin Pitezel. Not the children, not the hotel victims, just Pitezel. Because that case has the strongest evidence, the most proof, the clearest connection, and the prosecution doesn't want to risk an acquittal by overreaching. The trial lasts 5 days. Holmes represents himself for part of it, tries to charm the jury, to use his charisma, his intelligence, his manipulation skills, but it doesn't work. Not this time. The evidence is overwhelming. The witnesses are credible. The jury deliberates for 2.5 hours. Guilty. Holmes is sentenced to death, hanging. And while he waits in prison, he writes a confession, a memoir, trying to control the narrative, trying to shape his legend. He's paid $7,500 by a newspaper for his story, paid for confession, for details, for the gruesome specifics that will sell papers. He confesses to 27 murders, describes some in detail, the gas chambers, the torture, the dissections, but he also lies, claims he was possessed by the devil, says he couldn't control himself, says he's a victim of supernatural forces. It's manipulation, performance, one last con. And then, in his final letter, written the day before his execution, Holmes retracts everything, says he only killed 2 people, Pitezel and his associate, says the confession was forced, fabricated, that he's innocent, that this is all a misunderstanding, playing games until the very end. May 7th, 1896, Moyamensing Prison, Philadelphia, 10:12 a.m. H. Holmes is hanged. The trap drops, his neck breaks, he's pronounced dead 15 minutes later, buried in Holy Cross Cemetery, in a coffin filled with concrete, 2 tons of cement, because Holmes was terrified of body snatchers, afraid someone would steal his corpse, dissect it, study his brain, try to find the source of his evil. So he requested the cement, requested to be sealed away, made impossible to exhume. And with his death, the truth dies too, because only Holmes knew the real number. Only he knew all the names, all the victims, all the people who walked into his building and never left. The police tried to identify them, tried to match the bones, the belongings, the evidence, but it was impossible. Too many people missing, too few records, too much time passed. The murder castle stands for another year, 1896. But nobody wants it. Nobody will buy it. It's infamous, cursed, associated with death and horror. And on August 19th, 1895, before Holmes is even executed, the building catches fire. Mysterious circumstances, possible arson, and a significant portion is destroyed. The 3rd floor, the hotel rooms, the gas pipes, the soundproof chambers, gone, burned away. The building is partially rebuilt, but it's never the same. The pharmacy remains on the ground floor. Various businesses occupy the space over the years, but everyone knows, everyone remembers. This is where H. Holmes killed, where the murder castle stood, where over 100 people possibly died. Today, the building is still there, 63rd and Wallace, Chicago. It's a post office now, ground floor only. The upper floors are gone, demolished decades ago, but the basement remains, sealed, locked, forbidden, because they never fully excavated it, never found all the bones, never cleared all the evidence. It's still down there. The crematorium, the acid vat, the stretching rack, the walls that held screaming victims, the rooms where people died, and sometimes, late at night, postal workers report strange things, sounds from below, footsteps where no one should be, cold spots, the feeling of being watched. They don't like working there, don't like being alone in the building, because even though the hotel is gone, even though Holmes has been dead for over a century, something remains, some echo of the horror, some reminder that this place was built for evil. H. Holmes died in 1896, but his legacy lives forever. America's first documented serial killer, the man who built a castle to murder, who designed a building specifically to trap and kill, who treated human lives as commodities, who profited from death, who dissected victims like laboratory specimens, who burned bodies like trash, who sold skeletons like merchandise. And here's what's truly terrifying. He got away with it for years, killed possibly hundreds of people in the middle of a major city, during the World's Fair, while police were everywhere, while thousands of people walked past his building every day, and nobody knew, nobody suspected, nobody stopped him, until greed made him careless, until he murdered the wrong people, until he finally made a mistake. How many other H. Holmes are there? How many other buildings have secrets? How many other basements hold bones? How many other successful businessmen are hiding bodies? We only know about Holmes because he got caught, because he confessed, because his building was searched. But how many weren't caught? How many destroyed the evidence completely? How many took their secrets to the grave? That's the real horror of the murder castle, not just what Holmes did, but what it represents. The ease with which a charming sociopath can kill, the vulnerability of people far from home, the invisibility of certain victims, the failure of society to notice, to care, to investigate, to protect the powerless. Over 200 people possibly died in Holmes's building. We know maybe 20 names, 20 identified victims out of hundreds. The rest are just bones, fragments, unidentified remains. People who came to Chicago for opportunity, for adventure, for the World's Fair, and found only death. And nobody even knows their names. Nobody mourns them. Nobody remembers them, except as statistics, as numbers, as the unnamed victims of H. Holmes. The murder castle is gone. Mostly, the hotel rooms where people were gassed, the hallways where they ran screaming, the trapdoors that dropped them into darkness, burned or demolished. But the memory remains. The story remains. The warning remains. Don't trust charming strangers. Don't accept jobs that seem too good. Don't disappear without telling someone where you're going. Don't assume that a friendly face means a safe person, because monsters exist, real monsters, not supernatural, not imaginary, but human, calculating, patient, building their traps, waiting for victims, hiding in plain sight. H. Holmes proved that, built a hotel to prove it, killed possibly hundreds to prove it, and got away with it for years. Until he didn't, until greed trumped caution, until the bodies were too many to hide, until his luck finally ran out. He's been dead for 128 years, but the murder castle story lives on. A warning, a reminder, a horror story that's completely true. And if you ever find yourself at 63rd and Wallace in Chicago, standing in front of that post office, remember, you're standing on top of a graveyard, on top of sealed basement rooms, on top of evidence that was never fully removed, on top of the bones of people whose names we'll never know. The murder castle may be gone, but it's not forgotten, and neither is H. Holmes, America's first serial killer, the devil in the White City, the man who turned a building into a death trap and proved that sometimes the real monsters are the ones who smile and offer you a room for the night. Tomorrow, we go even darker, because if you thought a building designed to kill was bad, wait until you hear about the man who turned human skin into furniture, the man who inspired Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs. The man whose house was so disturbing that even hardened police officers threw up at the crime scene. Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield, the real-life Norman Bates, and the reason you should be very, very careful about accepting invitations from lonely men in rural farmhouses. But that's tomorrow. For now, sleep well and remember, H. Holmes's building is still standing, the basement is still sealed, and some horrors never truly die. They just wait in the dark, under the ground, in the spaces between walls, waiting to remind us that monsters are real, and sometimes they build hotels.